Before we get started here, I want to remind everyone to subscribe and sign up for all notifications on this channel. This channel is restricted by YouTube, so I'm counting on you to help us survive YouTube's anti-2A bias. Hey everybody, Yankee here. I want to do a quick addendum video to the video I did the other day comparing an older Smith & Wesson Model 66 to a newer Smith & Wesson Model 66. There's a couple of things people said in the comments section that I want to address. A couple of the things had to do with things I didn't talk about. So first, I wanted to address that I didn't talk about the different cylinder releases. Well, that's because this cylinder release right here is aftermarket. I got that from Hogue and I put it on there. If I went back to the original one that came on this gun, it wouldn't be really any different than this gun. That's why I didn't mention it, because like I said, it's not a standard piece, it is aftermarket. All right, now the other thing someone said I didn't mention, and it's a big thing, is I didn't talk about the internal lock. Well, to be honest, the reason I didn't talk about the internal lock is, well, I kind of forgot. Because here's the thing, it doesn't really make much difference. You know, the internal lock is there and it's kind of an eyesore, but I don't even notice it anymore. I've gotten so used to it. It is better to not have it, but I guess maybe it would be better to have it if you had small kids around. I mean, I guess it could serve a purpose. Now, me, myself, I don't like them. Wish they'd go away. Glad to see they're going away. However, they don't really affect the gun that much, not in how it looks or how it functions. Now, looks, it probably affects it more because you can see it there. Now, if you've got the aftermarket cylinder release like I do, you don't notice it as much, and that's probably one of the reasons I didn't talk about it. And it doesn't really affect how the gun works at all. You know, the old stories of, oh, they just come on or they ruin the gun and blah, blah, blah. There's no truth to much of that at all. There's no real reason to worry about any of that. But I can't lie and say I like the looks of it with the lock as well as I do without. And since we did mention things that were purely cosmetic in the other video, I should have covered at least the aesthetic aspect of the locks. And in that case, you know, the old gun is definitely going to win. It's going to get a point, and that does mean that the final tally ended up being not 5.5 to 7.5, but 6.5 to 7.5. But the new gun is still functionally a better gun. All the things that are better on the old gun lean more towards the aesthetic side, you know, the finishing side. All the things that are better on the new guns, you know, well, they contribute to better function. You know, the lockup, the sights, the trigger, the internal hammers, all that stuff is functional. And therefore, the new guns, I think, are actually better. Unless you're buying your gun just to look at it, well, then maybe the old ones are better. But often, the new ones look just as good as the old ones too, just a little different. So, in the end, the new guns, I think, are still better. Now, the other thing I want to address is someone that was contradicting me, saying I didn't know what I was talking about, that I should go back to doing whatever else it is that I might be good at because I don't shoot guns and I don't know anything about guns. You know, I get that all the time. What they were saying is that I was wrong about the trigger and the hammer on both guns. That these are not steel, that they are aluminum. On the old triggers, he says you can tell by looking at them, they're aluminum. Well, I hate to break it to you, they've never used an aluminum hammer. That really wouldn't work very well. They also said that the new ones are plastic. And I even had one other person say that they thought that the hammers and the triggers on the new Smith & Wesson guns were plastic, made to look like metal. And I'm betting that's because they heard they were MEM parts. But MEM parts are metal, they're just cast metal. These pieces are cast, but they're very hard pieces. They have the case hardened finish on them. I don't think they're case hardened. They just have a case hardened finish on them because the actual casting process itself is a type of hardening process. So I don't think they would need to case harden them. But, you know, they are what they are, and they look pretty good. I think they look good. I like the case hardened look in comparison to the rest of the gun. But they are metal, they're not plastic, and these are solid steel, and in this case, solid stainless steel, and we can prove that here with a magnet. As you can see here, the magnet sticks very hard to the hammer. You can actually pick the gun up with it. Also sticks very hard to the trigger here. You can definitely pick the gun up with this if I could get my fingers around it, but just it's very obvious these are actual steel, and in this case, stainless steel. Magnet wouldn't stick to them like that if they were aluminum. And like I said, they've never used aluminum hammers or triggers. Now, triggers, yes, in some guns, but not in the Revolvers. And now the one with the mem parts that some people thought were plastic. As you can see, nope, same thing with that. Very strongly sticks to it. Same thing with the trigger. Sticks to it very strong, so not going to go anywhere. So these are definitely metal. They're just mold injected metal, which is a type of process they use to make these. And what I thought was really funny is I had someone say that, well, because of those mem parts on the Smith & Wesson, that's why I buy a Ruger, so I don't get that. And I guess they don't understand the irony of that, because Rugers are cast guns. The whole gun is cast. So it doesn't really make sense to say, these cast trigger and hammer, that's why I wouldn't buy that gun. I'm going to buy the gun that's all cast. Because on the Smith & Wesson, at least the other parts are forged. That's why the Rugers are a little thicker, because they're cast, not forged. Both are plenty strong. Both do their job excellently and are stronger than they need to be, but sometimes there's differences, and that's one of the differences. And like I said, I think it's funny that some people don't realize the irony of that. But that's the addendum I wanted to make to that video and the things I wanted to address that were in the comment section. Like I said, it would change the outcome a little bit as far as the points. It's now 6.5 to 7.5. The new gun is still by far the better functional gun, and the older gun looks a little better, but they both use metal hammers, metal triggers, and in the case of the newer one, the mold injection metal is still metal, and it is not a bad thing. They do it very well.